Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to today's class. And we are going to be looking into automation testing today. And a couple of the topics we're going to be going through is what I'm currently showing on the screen. And as usual, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat or at the end of the class when we have the question and answer section, you can raise up your hand and also ask verbally as well. So for today's class, we're going to be looking into, or for most of the classes we're going to be taking, so because the topics are going to span across, some of the topics here will span across a couple of weeks or a couple of classes that we're going to be taking. And we're going to be looking into BDD and TDD. What does BDD mean? What does TDD mean? What's the difference between them? What do we currently use in an agile environment? We're going to be looking at feature file and step definitions. We're going to be looking at Gherkin syntax, POM in Maven, locators, assertions. We're going to be looking at Selenium weights, which includes implicit weight and explicit weight. When should you use each one of them or either of them? We are going to be looking into PageReview. We're going to be looking into hooks. And before I start, I'm just going to say that Google is going to be your friend. There are a lot of free online resources available to if you put BDD, for example, into Google, you're going to get a lot of resources on that. So Google is going to be your friend forever, basically, if you're doing automation testing. If you have code issues, you go on Google. If you have explanation issues, you go on Google. Google is going to be your friend. Code issues in the sense that someone else could have experienced that issue before, and they'll obviously post in different automation testing communities or different platforms like Stack Overflow, for example, or like GitHub communities. People post their code issues on there. They get suggestions. You obviously try it out, then they let people know that this was a suggestion that worked for them, or they obviously let people know that this was what they tried and they found the solution by themselves. So Google is going to be your friend. And then another thing is there are a lot of resources available. So you just need to like read on them, understand them, come back into the classes, ask questions. Or if you don't have any questions, that's totally fine as well. And I'm also going to say that you need to practice. Don't just say you're just watching it, you're not trying it out. If you don't try it out, you're not going to know how it feels. You're not going to understand what you're really doing. You're not going to have full confidence in yourself as well. So I'm always going to say you need to practice. You also don't have to just go with the URL that we're going to be testing in the classes. You can try different URLs and you can create a separate project, try testing the different URL using both positive and negative scenarios. And then if you need any of the tutors or any of the mentors to help you look through what you've done, then yeah, speak to anybody. I'm pretty sure they'll be willing to jump on a call with you to go through what you've done and give you suggestions or corrections. And even myself, I obviously learn from people as well. I've learned quite a lot from the people that I've mentored through Blue Sky Citadel. So I'm going to say you need to practice on your own. Don't just rely on what is being taught in the class. You can also, I'm going to be sharing like an updated resource file. So there was a PDF I sent last week, Thursday, I believe, or was it Friday? I've updated that file and there's a lot more information there now, like links, like different key terminologies in automation testing that you need to know. So all you need to do is to click on the link, read up on them to keep you informed. Obviously, we're going to be talking about them in class, but the links have got a lot more information as well. So you obviously need to read up by your own self also. And if you have questions, drop them in the community QA Guild channel, or if you're in the class, you ask us questions in the class as well. And if I'm not able to answer, like I usually say, I will reach out to other mentors or speak to Mr. DJ as well. And I'm pretty sure they will all be willing to help. So I believe that's everything I wanted to cover at the start. So I'm going to be looking into BDD first of all, BDD and TDD. So what does BDD mean? So I don't know if BDD has been touched on during like the manual class. I'm not entirely sure, but we're going to be looking into BDD and TDD. So this is another key automation terminology you need to know. So this BDD and TDD are considered as software development approach. So software development approach is the way you are basically carrying out the testing that you're doing. So BDD means behavioral driven development, and TDD means test driven development. So TDD is basically a software development approach. TDD is a software development approach where tests are written before the actual codes. So, and it's a case where the developers basically write the automated test script before writing the functional code. And this is one of the approach that is mostly common among developers instead of testers or any other member of the Agile community. And the developers basically write automated test script using they basically write automation test script before writing the functional code, and this ensures code validity and minimizes test script duplication as well. And this iterative process allows the developer to continually improve their code base by refactoring and addressing any failed tests. But when we look at BDD instead, BDD, behavioral driven development, is a software development approach that writes test cases in plain English. So for test-driven development, in most cases, it's mostly the devs that understand what has been written. But if you're using a BDD approach, anybody else that picks up your code will understand it because you're writing in plain English. So BDD just tends to help the team members that don't have technical expertise, like your scrum masters, your business analysts, or your product owners. It allows them to understand what is going on in the project. And this obviously bridges or it closes the gap between the business and the technical folks. And the BDD approach is easy to understand, like I said, because it's written in plain English and it has low technicality as well. And the other difference, so there are a lot of differences between BDD and TDD. So one of the difference, like I mentioned, is that for TDD, it is commonly used among the developers. For BDD, is used among the developers, the customers, and then the QAs as well. And for BDD, so it has a defined domain called behavior. So basically, so for BDD approach, you're focusing on the product behavior at the end of implementing the product functionality. So what I mean by this is before the product is obviously so it focuses on the product behavior at the end of implementing the product functionality. So basically once the product has been developed, you then test. So that's what BDD is about, and it basically ensures that what is in the requirement is exactly what is being tested, or that's the testing you're basically carrying out using the BDD approach. And for the TDD, sorry, I just realized that I did not finish writing that up. I must have gotten carried away. So for the TDD, the main focus in TDD is to get the appropriate functionality before the code is written, or before the product is actually being developed fully. So for TDD, you are basically using your code to determine what the end product is going to look like. So that's what TDD does. And then another difference is for BDD, Gherkin is used for writing, or is used to write the test scenarios. So we're going to look into what Gherkin is later on. And So Gherkin is used to write the test scenario, and Gherkin basically means you're writing your test scenario in plain English language. And the different frameworks that we use Gherkin in alongside the BDD approach is Cucumber framework, which is used with Java programming, or SpecFlow framework, which is used in C# programming. So those are where we use the BDD approach. And then the tools of framework where we use the TDD is JUnit, TestNG, NUnit. So these are basically where we use the TDD approach. And then another major difference is the BDD, for example. The BDD involves many team members. Like I said, you would obviously have like your client or your end users, to your business analysts, to your testers, to your developers. While for TDD, only the technical team, like the developers, will obviously take part in the TDD approach. And I'm going to send you a link for you to read up on BDD and TDD. So that's just what I'm going to say about BDD and TDD. So if anybody asks you that, what sort of software development approach did you use while you were working at Blue Sky Citadel, your answer is going to be behavioral driven development, BDD, because the test cases that you write are written in plain English, and then the focus of the BDD approach is to basically test the product's behavior at the end of the implementation. So we use TDD and Blue Sky Citadel training. That's what we use as our software development approach. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then moving on, I am going to look into what I call Gherkin. So like I mentioned at the start, the BDD approach, one of the frameworks, one of the tools that we use is called Gherkin. And this is a what do I say? So the Gherkin reference is basically what we use in the Cucumber Java framework that we are going to be looking into. So when I say Gherkin basically means writing your test cases in plain English language. And the Gherkin syntax is made up of a lot of keywords. So we have keywords like feature, we have given, when, then, and, we have background, we have scenario, we have examples, we have scenario outlines, and then we have a lot more keywords like like scenario templates, like scenarios. But the ones that I've put down here are the major ones that are used a lot more than the rest of the other keywords. And the different keywords that we have here have different meanings, or they have different functionalities, and they have different, you need to use them at the right place when you're writing your Gherkin syntax in your feature files as well. So I'm going to be taking a break in between some of my slides to obviously show you what I'm talking about practically as well. So I'm going to be opening up IntelliJ later on, but I just need to cover a couple of terminologies and keywords before I move on to showing you what we are going to be discussing now in IntelliJ later on. So when we talk about the feature keywords, for example, which is the very first one that we have here, so is a keyword in the Gherkin syntax that provides high-level description of the software feature or the software test that you're trying to write. So it basically gives a simple description of what the test is about. Is the test, for example, your test could probably be covering valid login. So your feature would obviously have a description of something like, as a valid user, I am trying to log into my Blue Sky Citadel account. So that is just like a high-level description of what that test or the scenario is going to be doing. So that's what feature is. And then when we now come to the after feature, the next keyword you usually write is actually scenario. So what is scenario, or what does scenario mean? So scenario obviously covers scenario or scenario outlines. They are like example steps. So scenario outline, for example, scenario is a single test case or a single example that you're trying to test. Scenario outline is a test case that has multiple examples underneath it. So you could have a case where you're trying to write a test case for a valid scenario. So you could have a test case for my own details, maybe for Olawumi's details, maybe for Mr. Deji's details. So that's 3 people. So instead of writing 3 separate test cases, you add all of those details under one test case. And this is basically where code reusability comes in. So I'm going to be showing you the practical aspects of how scenario outline works. Because when you have scenario outline, example works alongside scenario outline. They go hand in hand together. So when we now look at the keyword called background, background also helps to minimize code duplication. So in a case where you have multiple given steps and they are all the same thing, you can just copy all of those given steps under your background in your feature file. And then every time you're trying to run the test, you go to the background first of all. If there's anything there, pick up what is there and do an action on them before it then goes into your different scenarios that you've written. So I'm going to be looking into backgrounds later on, but I just wanted to have an understanding. And I'm also going to share a link for all of these topics or keywords that we're going to be looking into today. So when we have another one that we have is given, when, then, and. So given, when, then, and are important Gherkin syntax or Gherkin keywords that you need to know and understand when to use them, because they are very, very important. And this is what basically forms the basics of writing your test cases inside your feature file in IntelliJ. So the given step is just to describe the initial context of the system, or like the scene of the scenario that you're trying to test. And it's typically something that happened in the past. So an example could be given I navigate to the URL. So the URL in that case could be any URL you're trying to test. So given I navigate to the URL, so that given step is basically trying to set the tone of the system. Like, what do you need to do before we actually perform another action? So you need to set the tone of the system, given I navigate. So you're trying to access a URL. So that's what the given step is about. When we now come to when, so the when describes an action or it describes an event. So this is when someone interacts with that system. So the system in this case is the URL they're trying to access. So when do you now use the when step? So I'm going to assume that we're trying to log into our Gmail account, for example. Given I navigate to the Gmail URL, when I click on the login button. So when I click on the login button, you've performed an action. So you've already interacted with the system by clicking on the login button. And then after the when, we usually have and, but, then. That's when you use the other keywords. So we have the and. So the and in this case is to it could be sometimes it could be considered as continuation of the when. So instead of having like when, multiple whens, you use and. So it's going to be given I navigate to the Gmail URL. When I click on the login button, So when you're trying to access your Gmail, you have two major fields. You have your I think they call it username. You have your username field or your email field that you need to put your email in. Then you have your password field. So those are the two major ones. So the way I'm going to write that test in my feature file is going to be given I navigate to the Gmail URL. When I click on the login button and I enter my username and I enter a valid username and I enter a valid password, because obviously if you're trying to log in to your Gmail, you need to use valid credentials. That means you already have an account created, number one. Number two, it means you've obviously validated the link that has been sent into your inbox. So you need to be able to, so in order to sign in, you need to use valid email address and valid passwords. So given I navigate to the Gmail URL and I enter and I click on the login button and I enter a valid email address and I enter a valid password, the next thing you need to do is to click another button, right? Which is the login button or the enter button. When I click on the login button, when, we're using the when keyword again because you are interacting with the system. When I click on the login button, what happens? Then I am able to log into my Gmail account. So you can see the then step or the then keyword is also important. And the then is mostly used to describe an expected outcome or an expected result. So what happens when you click the login button? You are then able to access your account. So the then step, you use it to describe an expected outcome. And this is when you need to use an assertion to compare the expected outcome to the actual outcome. So assertion is also something we're going to be looking at. I don't know if I added it on my table of content. Oh yeah, it's there. So we're going to be looking into assertions along the line as well. So given, when, then, and. We usually don't use bots, but you can have an understanding of what bots is as well. So I'm going to be sharing resources to the key Gherkin syntax or the key Gherkin words that you need to know. So you obviously read up on them. We're going to be using most of, or the only thing we're not going to use here is the bots. I'm going to use every other Gherkin keywords here. So you obviously understand a lot better when we move on to IntelliJ, and then we are writing feature file steps using these Gherkin keywords. You will know when you're meant to use the feature, what the importance of the feature keyword is, what the importance of scenario is. If you don't have, assuming you're using a scenario outline, you don't have example, your test is not going to run because it's going to be coming up with an error that something is missing. So you obviously understand a lot more better when we move into IntelliJ, like when you're meant to use all of these keywords. So moving on, so this is a sample Gherkin step that we would usually have in IntelliJ or in whatever IDE that you're using. So if you're going to be using Gherkin. So we've used scenario keyword. So what does a scenario keyword mean? So scenario keyword is just like a brief explanation for what the test is about. So this one just says successful login. That's what the test is doing. So we have the given that the user is on the login form page and the user has entered a valid email username. This is the username, and entered a valid password as well. When, which is an action, when the user clicks the login button, then the user is directed to the home page. So you can see that the given and when then are used correctly in this particular sentence based on the explanation that I've given, or they are using these particular steps based on the explanation that I've given. So like I said, when we move into IntelliJ, you understand a lot more better where you're meant to use them. And then obviously you need to read up on them as well. So it gets ingrained into you. And like I said, the more you practice writing your test cases using Gherkin, the better you're going to become at writing test cases, basically. and you'd obviously be able to review your colleagues' test cases just to let them know, oh, you're not using the right keywords in the right place. And you can obviously correct them and also explain it to them as well. So, right. So let me see. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here now, and I'm going to move on to IntelliJ. So when I move on to IntelliJ, we're going to look into feature files and step definition a lot more. And then we're also going to look into POM in Maven as well. So we'll be looking into those ones a lot more also. So moving on, I'm going to open up my, let me see, let me just move this one here. So I'm going to open up my IntelliJ. So I think my IntelliJ looks a bit different to everybody else's own, but it could be because I've been using my own for, I've created a lot of projects, so that's why I've seen a lot of projects here. But in a case where, or this is going to be the case for most of you, you don't have any like directory or any existing project on your IntelliJ, so it's going to be blank. What you need to do is to click on new project. I really wish I knew what the screen of one of your IntelliJ looks like, but if you see project or new project, click on new project. So once you click on new project, you're going to come up with, you will see the next, this next pop-up that comes up. And all you need to do is still click on new project. Then you need to fill out the name. And the name I'm going to give it is I hope I don't have this name somewhere in my file. So I'm going to call it automation test project. You can see that the name here is also what was duplicated here for the artifact ID. And another thing you need to take note of is the location for your projects, like where is it stored? Because you may want to go into that folder to pick up your project or to open it up manually from there as well. So I know that mine is stored under my desktop, is stored inside my desktop. So take note of where your project is stored. Mine is stored under my desktop. The language I'm using is Java. My build system is Maven. My JDK is JDK 17 because that's what I have on my laptop at the moment. Most people probably have JDK 21. That's totally fine. And then what you need to do next is to click on create. So once you've created a project, you would see something called tip of the day. So this is just how your IntelliJ is going to look like once you open it up. I don't know, you're probably all using like the latest one, so I don't know if it's going to look a lot more fancier than mine currently looks like. There's a high chance that yours will probably look a lot more fancier, but it's all the same, to be honest. So you would see a prompt that comes up that says tip of the day. So this is something that IntelliJ does every single day. You open up the project from your folder, it gives you tip of the day, and they are like shortcuts for making your use of IntelliJ a lot more easier. So for example, it says, I use a Mac, so it says press Command 1 to open up the project 2 window and switch focus to it. So they are just a little shortcuts that you can obviously try out. And you can obviously get like the cheat sheet, IntelliJ cheat sheets. So you can get IntelliJ cheat sheets online. Just Google IntelliJ cheat sheets. Then you look for the one that goes with your operating system, in that Windows or Mac. And you really don't have to cram them, to be honest. because as you use IntelliJ a lot more, you will know what different commands to use to do different things, what command you need to use to like align your project so that it looks nicer, what command you use to be able to go from your feature file to your step definition. So just as you use the project, you get to know all of these things as well. And also, obviously, try out the things on the cheat sheet also. So like the more you use it, the more it gets part and parcel of you, to be honest. So that's just what I'm going to say. So I'm going to click on close, or you can click on next to see the next tip of the day, next. I'm just going to click on close. So now that my IntelliJ is, I've created a new project in my IntelliJ, and the first thing I'm going to do is to install some plugins. So there are two major plugins that I need to install, and they are very, very essential because they're going to be needed to build your project, to run your codes, and everything like that. So to go to your plugin section or your settings section on your Mac, if you're using a Mac, at the very top of your screen, where you have the IntelliJ IDEA, click on that. If you're using a Windows, I don't know if it's going to be called settings. I think it's going to be called settings at the top. If you're using a Mac, click on the IntelliJ IDEA icon at the top corner of your screen and click on settings or preferences. And if you're using a Windows, you need to click on settings, I believe. And then once you've clicked on settings or you've clicked on preferences, you need to scroll down on this side of your settings page that's popped up and click on plugins. So once you click on plugin, you need to go to Marketplace. And the two major plugins that we want to install, I've already installed mine. The two major plugins we want to install are Cucumber for Java and Gherkin. So those are the two major ones that we need. Cucumber for Java, because in order to use Cucumber within your IntelliJ IDEA, because we're using Java with IntelliJ as well, we need Cucumber as our plugin or external software. And Gherkin and Cucumber work hand in hand together. And like I said, we're going to be writing our test cases in Gherkin. So obviously we need a Gherkin plugin as well, because if you're writing your test cases without the Gherkin plugin, then number one, the colors are going to be off. Number two, the test is not going to run, to be honest. It would not run. So the two major plugins that you need, Cucumber for Java, and then you need Gherkin as well. So I'm just going to take a screenshot of this to take note of. So you need Cucumber for Java, you need Gherkin. And where do you find them? They are currently showing under the install because I've installed them, but you need to come to the Marketplace. So since you've not used IntelliJ before, you need to look for Gherkin and Cucumber for Java under Marketplace. So you just need to type Gherkin. I think in this case, it's going to show mine as ticked, which means I've installed it. But for all of you, it's going to show as installed. So it's going to have this install button up here instead of this checkbox that's already ticked. It's going to have the install button there. You just need to click on install. And once you click on install, it's going to ask you to restart your IntelliJ, and you need to do that. But before you click on restart IntelliJ, you need to install Cucumber for Java as well, so that you don't restart IntelliJ twice. So you just do the restart once, Cucumber for Java. Right. So you can see mine is ticked because I've installed it. But for you, it's going to show an install button here. So you just need to click on install, then it's going to do the downloads. And then once you're done, it's going to ask you to, it's going to prompt you. There's going to be a button here. Instead of disabled, it's going to say restart IDE. And all you need to do is to click on that button that says restart IDE. And once the IntelliJ restarts, it's going to come back up by itself. And then when you come back to this plugin section, you should see your Cucumber for Java and your Gherkin under installed, and they should then be ticked like this. And all the other plugins that are here, they came or they were added by the IntelliJ guys themselves. So you don't need to do anything to them. Leave them the way they are. There's no need to touch them. I really don't know what they do. They are probably necessary. So we have like Maven, for example, we have Gradle, we have, and so depending on the system or depending on the depending on the test environment you're trying to run your testing, that is what your IntelliJ is going to pick up. We're using Maven, for example, so the Maven plugin is required. And that is why we have Maven already automatically installed here. And that was because at the very first, the small box that popped up when you installed IntelliJ, where you said you need to pick, when Mr. Ade just said we needed to pick Maven, Gradle, and all the other things. So when you ticked all of those boxes, then IntelliJ basically downloaded all of these plugins as well because it's obviously needed. So you don't need to touch them. The only two things you need to do in your plugin section is to install Cucumber for Java, Gherkin, restart your IntelliJ IDE when you're prompted, and let it come back up by itself. Sweet. So I'm going to assume that everybody's IntelliJ has been restarted now, then it's back up, then you're back on this same page or a different page. Nice. So what do we do next? So you see that you have a lot of folder structures on the left-hand side of your IntelliJ. So we have what we call the project, we have the structure section, we have the Maven. So the reason why you have Maven here is because you've installed Maven. So you have the Maven section as well. You have bookmark. I don't really use bookmark. You have the problem tab. So if you run your code and there's an error, it's going to show on that problem. You have your terminal. So if you want to push and pull your code to a version control system like GitHub, so I don't know if GitHub is going to be looked into. So it's like a version control system. So where you obviously like store your codes that you've written. So in order to access GitHub, you use your terminal here. You have the build, we have the dependency tab, we have the version control tab. So there are different tabs in IntelliJ. So you can look through IntelliJ documentation to understand what all of these tabs mean. And it can be quite useful, or you can just learn along the way as well, which was what I did. And so anything that works for you, basically. So you can read through the IntelliJ documentation where it basically talks about like the different sections on the IntelliJ screen when it pops up. And I think there's one more thing I need to show you. So my Zoom button is sort of obstructing it. So that's why I just moved it down a bit. Right. So for I'm not sure what I just did. So we have the run button here. So the buttons I'm showing you now are one of the major buttons that we would use. We have the run button, we have the debug button, we have the edit configuration. We're going to use this quite a lot. And most people are always confused when I say click edit configuration. Go to edit configuration. If you want to know where your edit configuration is, it's just next to the run button. Click on whatever, just the drop down arrow that is here. You see edit configuration. Another major button that we use is Maven here. If you want to reload your Maven project or your dependencies, you need to come to the Maven section here. And another major button that we use here is this reload button. So the very first icon that you see on the Maven section is a major icon that we use when we are running our tests. Right. So we'll go back to our project section because this is a very important part. And this is where we need to create all our files, our folders, and we need to be extremely careful when we are creating our files and folders as well. You don't want to create them in the wrong place or give them the wrong extension as well. So you need to create them in the right place and with the right extensions. So first off, we have the SRC folder, we have the main folder, which was the project folder that you already named at the very beginning when you were creating the project. So mine is called Test Automation Project. And inside the Test Automation Project, so I'm going to go back. Test Automation Project, we have the SRC, and where we are going to be creating most of our files and our folder is the test, then Java. Under test and Java, you will see if I click on main, we have Java here as well. But this is not the Java that we're going to be creating our file or our project in. The reason why I'm emphasizing this is because I've seen a lot of people make the mistake of creating their files and their folders under the main. Sometimes people usually recommend that you delete the main folder because you actually don't need it. But I'm just going to say you should leave it the way it is. Don't delete it. And ensure that you create everything you need to create under your test folder instead. Be very conscious, test folder instead. So another file that is important here is POM. So like I mentioned at the start, we'll be looking at POM in Maven. POM basically stands for Page Object Model, and it's a fundamental unit of work in Maven. And the POM files basically resides in the base directory of the folder, which is exactly what we have here. So it's residing, this is the base directory of the project. So this is the base directory of the project, and we have our POM inside of it. And this was automatically created when we created our project at the start, and then we clicked on Maven. Let me open that screenshot again if I can find the screenshot. So the screenshot that I took, oh, that was the wrong one. I didn't take the screenshot. But at the very start, when we had the new project, when we're filling out the important information, there was a part where we had to click on, I think, Java, then Maven. So Maven is so POM is obviously a fundamental unit of work in Maven, and it works hand in hand. POM and Maven, they work hand in hand together. So the POM file resides in the base directory of the project, which is what we can see here. The POM is inside the test automation project that we've created. And this POM file contains the information about the project, the different configuration details that are used by Maven to build a project. We're going to be copying a couple of details into our POM file as well. And I know people may have questions about the POM file. Where do we get all the content from? And everything like that. So the POM file contains goals, it contains plugin, it contains the project dependencies, the build profile, project version control, or the project version. It could also contain the developer's name as well, and also like a directory to the test report or anything like that. So the POM file, what you should always know about the POM file is that it contains information about the project. That's all you need to know. So the POM file contains information about the project. So that's one of the major files that we're going to be working on in the project. And it basically also helps you to run your test as well, because the plugins and the dependencies that we're adding in there is what is going to be used to run the test that we are writing. So moving on, we're going to start creating our folders now. Like I mentioned, we have the base directory, which is test automation. Then we have SRC folder. Then we have tests. Then we have Java. So this test and Java are the folders that we're going to be creating our other folders inside of, and our files as well. So we're going to start off with the resources folder. So the resources folder is going to be the resources folder is where your feature files and your feature folder is going to reside in. So how do you create your resources folder? You can see I've clicked on tests, which is the test folder. Right click on that, click on new, then go to directory. So because I've created resources folder a couple of times, that's why it is showing here. But in most cases, it may not show for any of you guys. So I'm just going to I would not click on this resource folder because I usually just click on it because I've created it multiple times. But for you guys that are just starting up, I'm just going to type resources, and you can see that I want you to note down that my file names are in lower cases. If it's in uppercase, you're going to see it in uppercase. Another thing I forgot to mention is when you are creating your project name, you can see my own does not have any space in between them. I wrote them all together. And then you can also note the way I wrote my file name as well. Another thing you can notice, the first letter of every word is capital. Test automation project. Just looks nice. If you have everything all in lower cases, it's still okay, but it doesn't look nice. It doesn't look presentable. So all of these little things that we're doing, and the naming convention, there's no full stop there, there's no underscore, because there are some folder names that you can have numbers starting it, you can have underscore starting the file name or the folder name. So those are the little things you need to note. And when we are looking into introduction to Java, I'm going to delve more into all of those things, but I just wanted to note that out for you all. So I've written resources here. So I press enter. So I'm going to do something. So in most cases, when you create your resource folder, it would usually look like this. You can see that the brown folder name, the folder name as, or the folder, the gray folder has like this other icon next to it. So I think that's what's going to happen when you create your own. So it's going to have something like this next to it. And then we want to make our resource folder, want to mark it as test resources root. And how do you do that? You basically right click on the resources folder, then scroll down to mark directory as test resources root. So we're going to click on that, mark directory as test resources root. How did I do that again? Make sure you are clicking on the resources folder. You can see it highlighted in blue. Right click on it, then mark directory as test resources root. So it's not showing there right now because I've already marked it as test resources root. And then your icon for your resources root should then look like this. You see there are two icons on the folder itself now. So that's how it should look like. If it doesn't look like this, your test isn't going to run. So you need to make sure that your resources folder is marked as test resources root. And I'm emphasizing it again because it is very, 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 very important. So now that we've done this, the next thing I'm going to do under my resources folder is to create my feature folder. So I'm going to go to right click on the resources folder, click on new again, then go to directory. And I'm going to call my feature folder features. Features. It has an S at the end, is a small letter F. Features. I'm going to press enter. So you can see it is underneath, or it is inside the resources folder. So people make a mistake of like creating it under the test instead of under resources. So your feature folder needs to be under your resources folder. So I'm just going to close this one up because we still have a lot of folders to create. But all the other ones are going to be under our Java folder, which is here, just above the resources one that we've created. So I'm going to be creating a couple of packages now inside our Java folder, and you're also going to do the same thing as well. So the first one I'm going to create is called Cucumber Manager. So the Cucumber Manager package is going to house my WebDriver Manager. So when we are running our automation tests, we can run them on Firefox browser, we can run them on Chrome browser, we can run them on Internet Explorer, we can run them on Safari. And in order to run them using any IDE, you need what we call web drivers. So web drivers are basically instances of those browsers that I've mentioned. But these web drivers are going to be called from IntelliJ itself, or they're going to be started up from inside IntelliJ instead of having to just like open up your Chrome browser from here. IntelliJ is going to open up the Chrome browser by itself. So in order for IntelliJ to be able to open up the Chrome browser that you're using or the Internet Explorer that you're using, you need what we call the web drivers, and there are different web drivers available. So this Cucumber Manager is going to house the dependency that calls those web drivers up for us. So that's one of the folders we have created. Then we have another one called Cucumber Options. So this is going to house our test runner. So for our test runner, the test runner basically lists out the file path to our features here. So the features that we've created here is very, very important because we need the path. We need a file path for that. That's going to be called in our Cucumber Options. We also have what we call step definition. So the step definition is like the glue between the codes that we are writing and the feature file itself. So unmuted, I mean. Okay, muted a person. So like I said, the Cucumber option houses our test runner, and our test runner contains our tags, our feature file paths or feature folder paths, and also the step definition path as well. And the feature file and the step definition. So the feature file basically contains the Gherkin steps that we are writing. So high-level description of the test scenario is what we consider as our feature file, while the step definition basically contains the codes that runs the test in the feature file. So we're going to see how the step definition and the feature file are connected, or they are intertwined. So one of the ways that they intertwine is a test runner that lives inside the Cucumber options. So I'm going to be looking into that one as well. So I think for today, we are probably going to look into our folder structures, and I'll see if I'm able to also write the Gherkin step as well for the test environment that we're looking at. So that's what we're going to look at today. So we've created our Cucumber option folder. The next folder that we need under our Java, or the next package, is what I call page objects. So I'm going to right click on the Java folder again, click on new, go to package, and then I'm going to type page objects. Click on enter. Then the final folder that I'm going to create here is what I'm going to call, so it's also the same way, right click on Java, go to new, package, and it's called step definitions. Step definitions suite. So I've created my major folders. Now I need to create a couple of files inside of them. So the first file I'm going to create is going to be my test runner, and I said it needs to be under the Cucumber option. So how do I create my test runner? Right click on the Cucumber option folder, then right click on it, go to new, then Java class. So I'm going to call this Java class test runner. You can see the way I've written it, capital T, capital R. And I need to click on class, not any other options, just class. Sweet. So you can see that my test runner is now created underneath the Cucumber option folder. So the value for this test runner, I'm going to share it with you in the documentation, the resource PDF document I sent. So I'm going to send you the content for the POM file. I'm going to send you the content for the test runner. I'm going to send you a link where you need to get the content for one other major file that we need that is called test.ng. So before I move on to test.ng, let us fill in the content for our test runner. So I'm going to pick up the last 2 lines. You can see I still have the package. I'm not touching the package at all. I just highlighted the other 2 lines inside of it. I'm going to paste what I've just copied. Good. So you can see that they are all in red. That's because I sort of forgot to put my content for my POM file. So I'm going to go back into my POM file and I'm going to slot in the dependencies and the plugins that I need. So like I mentioned, I'm going to send you the content for the POM file as well. And most of the content of the POM file, or all of the content, were gotten from a common repository, which is called Maven repository. And that is one of the major repository that you'll be using along the way as well. In your normal day-to-day job, if you want to get any dependencies or any plugins, you go on there to pick up the dependencies that you need. And once you have the dependency in your POM file, and you'll be able to like incorporate the dependencies or the plugins with your IntelliJ project, all you need to do is to just call the name of those dependencies wherever you need to use them in your file, and they work automatically. So they are mostly like free resource or open sources available out there for you to use. So the content for my POM file is also going to be in the PDF document as well. And all you need to do is to copy it, and you need to be conscious of where you paste it. It needs to be after your properties. So you can see mine is showing 1717. Yours will probably be showing like 2121 if you downloaded Java 21. But I have Java 17, so that's why it's showing 1717, so you don't need to worry. But wherever you're copying from the document I'm going to send, needs to be pasted after properties. So just like I've done here, properties, paste what I just copied. And once I've pasted it, you will see this M sign pop up. So this M sign, you need to click on it so that it loads the Maven dependencies that you just added. So it loads it, or you basically, so what I mean by is loading it is that it's going to be downloading it into your IntelliJ. And you only need to, okay, I'm going to backtrack for a minute. I forgot to say something. So you see the Cucumber Java plugin and the Gherkin plugin that you installed. You only need to do it once. You only need to do it the very first time you want to use your IntelliJ project, and you don't need to do it ever again. But in a case where you uninstall your IntelliJ and you install it back in again, then you need to install your plugins again. But now that we've installed the plugin once and for all, you don't need to do it ever again. But for your POM file, you can create as many projects as you can in your IntelliJ, and there's going to be new POM file every time you create your project. So you need to always add the content for the POM file every single time. So once you add the content of your POM file, you're going to get this icon that is over here. If you don't see the icon, you have another option to click on Maven. Then this is the icon over here as well. So this icon and this icon, they do the same job. So we're going to load the Maven imports, and then you load the Maven import, so it's going to download all of the dependencies onto your IntelliJ project specifically. So if I click on this now, you would see it doing something down here where it says resolving dependencies, scanning files to indexes. It does it sharp, like it doesn't waste time. And then once it's done, the This is showing in orange. You don't need to worry about that. There's no issue at all. But one thing I want you to note is that I don't have any errors in my test runner anymore. So what I was missing was the content of my POM file. So that's why the errors were showing in the test runner. So once I filled in my dependencies in my POM file, I didn't have errors showing anymore. So I filled in the content of my POM file, I filled in content for my test runner. Then another major file that I need is what I call the test.ng. And the test.ng needs to be created under the base directory of your project as well. So at the very top, which is the test automation project, I'm going to be creating another file called test runner. So I'm going to right click on the test project automation that I've created, click on new, then click on file. I'm not clicking on Java class this time around. I'm not clicking on directory. I'm clicking on file. So I'm going to click on file. I'm going to call this testng.xml. You can see the lettering all in lowercase, testng.xml. Once I'm done, I'm going to click on enter. Then you'll see it created just underneath my POM. And the content for this test.ng, I'm going to send you the link for that. So it's just here. Just need to copy everything. Go back to your project and paste. And once you paste it, you would see that your class name has got an error. That's because the path is incorrect. So we need to use the correct path for our test runner. And all we need to do, you can see the test runner is under Cucumber option. So all you need to do here is to just type the name of the folder again. You see it's coming up here. I just typed CU, came up, and I need to put a dot. And there we have it. So everything is fixed now. So we've created our different folders. We've added content into our POM file. We've created our test.ng and added the content. We've created our test runner class and added the content for the test runner as well. We've also created our features folder. So right now, what I'm going to do next, before I sort of round up this class, is to take you through the test environment we're going to be using. And then we're going to create a feature file that contains one test for the test environment. So if I show you the test environment, so this is the test environment we are using. I'm going to share the URL inside the PDF I'm going to be sending as well, and also into the Telegram chat separately also, so that you all have it. And in the PDF document, this URL is called test website. I think that's what I've called it. I called it test website, so you can pick it up from there or from the group chat. Just a minute, please. Okay, so this is the test environment we are going to be using. And like I mentioned, you are obviously working on different URLs in your different teams. So the test environment we're using now is just to show you how you're meant to automate your test. So you can be learning with this test environment, but you obviously need to be automating what is on your Azure board as well. So you've probably done a lot of manual tests, and now it will be time for you to automate some of them. So I'm pretty sure you'll be dealing with registration, you'll be dealing with login. I think those are like the major ones that I know about. So you would have to automate the registration test, covering both positive and negative scenarios. Then you also need to start automating like your login test as well, or your login test cases, covering both positive and negative scenario and all the different combinations of scenarios they are trying to cover. So as you're working alongside this automation project, you need to create a separate project covering what you're doing in your team as well. If you have questions, you can ask questions on the group chat or during our training classes. Sorry, I just need to cough just a minute. Right. So looking at the automation form, there are a lot of fields on the page. There are a lot of fields on the page. We need to fill in a couple of details. There are some compulsory ones like the name, the email address. I think those are like the major ones. We have the cookie button as well. We have the submit button. So we're going to be looking into automating fields like this. We're going to be looking into automating drop downs like this. We're going to be looking into automating radio buttons. Yes, radio buttons like this, which only selects or accepts one option. I'm going to be looking into automating checkbox that picks or select or allows two options to be picked. I'm going to be looking into automating buttons. I'm going to be looking into assertions. I'm going to be looking into automating the cookie button as well to accept the cookie. So these are the different actions that I'm going to be looking into while automating this page. So first off, this page is obviously a registration page, like you can tell, because it's basically accepting my details. Or it could be a registration page or an inquiry page. It looks more like an inquiry page than a registration page, to be fair. So I'm going to call it inquiry page. That's what I'm going to call it. It's not a registration page, it's an inquiry page because it's collecting my details and I'm basically inquiring about courses, what day works best for me for the courses, the timing, and all my other personal details as well. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go back into my IntelliJ, go under my features folder, and I'm going to right click on that and create a feature file. So right click on features, new file. So I'm going to call it inquiry page dot feature. I'm going to click on enter. So you can see that the icon here is looking a bit different. It's looking like a kiwi symbol or like a C symbol. So this symbol here basically represents Cucumber. So the Cucumber for Java plugin that you installed is what is being shown here. That is where the dot feature comes in. If you don't have a dot feature, you can create a new file now. I'll just say inquiry. I didn't add a dot feature. Let's see what happens. You see, just creating a generic file. It's not creating a Cucumber file for me. If I write my Gherkin step in this generic file and I try to run the test, nothing is going to happen. So I'm going to just delete this one. And so you need to ensure that when you're creating your feature file needs to have the dot feature extension at the end of it. If it doesn't have the dot feature extension, it is not a feature file. Some people usually omit the full stop. There is a full stop before the feature. Registration.feature, login.feature, inquiry page.feature, whatever file name you want to call it needs to have dot feature. And you need to see this icon pop up as well. The feature is a small lowercase f. It's not an uppercase F. So those are the little things you need to take note of. So we have an inquiry page of feature. Nice. So now this is where the Gherkin keywords that I mentioned before comes into play. So I'm going to start with feature. The feature file should always start with the feature keyword. If it doesn't have the feature keyword, your test is not going to run. So those are I think this is me remembering the lead two errors people made from like the previous cohorts. They didn't have the feature. Some people had feature. Some people didn't have the dot. Some people used capital F for the file extensions. Yeah. Some people didn't have. Some people use small f. If you use a small f, you can see like the color. So another thing IntelliJ does is that it's going to show you when something is wrong. And that's because this also works alongside the plugin as well. So this is why you have the plugins in place. I added a capital F. You can see it's already showing me feature and the color looks different. For example, if I omit the E, you can see it's still not showing me the right color. It needs to show the right color. And that's obviously what you need to note down. So the feature is like a high-level description. So what is the website about? Submitting an inquiry form for a course. So that's what the inquiry, this is wrong. So that's what the website is about. It's an inquiries form, picking up details about the course I'm interested in, my personal details as well, and every other thing. So the next thing I'm going to do now is so after you've done your features, the next keyword you need to use is scenario, because scenario is like example. So scenario is the same as example, and it obviously contains your given when then scenarios or your given when then steps. It contains your test steps that you're going to be writing in plain English language. So the code is going to be written in step definition. The plain English language part is going to be written in your features folder inside your feature file. So the next Gherkin keyword I'm going to be using is scenario. So you can see it's giving me option of scenario, scenario outline, scenario template. I'm going to be going with scenario because I'm only writing just a single test case. I'm not writing multiple test cases I'm not writing a test case with different examples. I'm only writing a single test case. So I need the scenario keyword. So I'm going to call the scenario name. I'm going to call the scenario name. So we're dealing with inquiry form. I'm just going to mute who is speaking. Please, can we all be muted, please? So for scenario, let me look for a reasonable scenario name. So the names you obviously use in your file should make sense so that if anybody else picks it up or you are not around and another automation tester is picking it up, they're able to understand what you've written. So valid scenario name. Valid scenario name. So I'm trying to submit an inquiry form. So I'm gonna say I'm just trying to think of a name. Wait, someone is really muted and causing interruption. Please, can you mute yourself?
Emmanuel, please watch out, please.
Valid scenario names. Oh, why is it so difficult to think of valid scenario names? Obviously, it's a positive. I'm going through a positive journey end to end. I'm not doing any validations in any of my fields. So I'm just gonna say okay, I've muted him. So valid scenario names. Let me think of one. End-to-end positive journey. Does that make sense? Just gonna put I'm going to put positive test for the inquiry form. So this is just start to finish. I'm going to fill in all the required fields, tick everything that needs to be ticked. I'm not doing any validations I'm not going to be entering any invalid email. I'm not going to be entering any invalid name. I'm not going to omit any field. I just want a positive journey from start to finish. Everything should flow through. So now that I've done that, I'm going to take us back to the website and I'm going to tell you what the steps are meant to look like. So, where's the website again? So it's going to look something like this. So this is how my Gherkin step is going to look like. Given I navigate to the website and I fill in the first name and the last name field, which is this one and this one because they are compulsory. You can see the asterisks. And I fill or I enter my email address and I enter my height and I select the right vegan option and I enter my location and I select the right option for career change question and I fill out the hobbies and interest field and I select my course choice and I select my career progression and I select the days that work best for me, or I can say something like, and I select the days and I select the time and I select my favorite music. When? So when, like I mentioned at the start, is when you use the when keyword when you're interacting with a system or you're trying to make a change to something. So the when in this case would be when I select the submit button. So when you select the submit button, what happens? The form should be submitted. That is what we're expected, or that's what we expect to happen when we run this test, or when we write out this test like this, and when we obviously run the test when we filled in all the codes. So given, if I go back to my Gherkin keywords understanding again, if I go back to given describes the initial context. Given describes the initial context of the system. So given, I navigate to the inquiry forms website, number one, that's given. You can say when I enter the first name and last name field, or you can use and. So the and that I've been saying, instead of the and, you can use when, but it just doesn't look nice. So that's why the and is there in place. So the and is like a continuation of either the given action that you've started or a continuation of the when action that you're trying to implement. So instead of the when, you obviously use, instead of multiple whens, you can use and, but you can have more than one when in a test scenario. You can have more than one when in a test scenario. So it's going to be given I navigate to the inquiry page website, when or and, I'm going to use and and I enter the first name and last name field, and I enter the email address, enter the height, select all of these things. When I submit, click the submit button, then, so the then statement, like I said, it describes the expected outcome. What happens when you click the submit button? Then the form is submitted successfully. That is what happens. So I'm going to go back into my IntelliJ now, and I'm going to write all of those steps out. And I also have a copy somewhere. So instead of wasting time on the call to write every single one of them, I'm just going to copy and paste when I get to a specific line. And yeah, we move on from there. So the first thing, like I said, is we start with the given. So given, I navigate to the URL. That's the first thing that happens. So another thing I want you to notice, I didn't write my G in small letter, please. The G is in capital letter, given. And you can see that even before I finish typing the words out, it's been suggested for me as well. So I can press enter. Given, I navigate to the website. Another thing you need to notice is my other half of the sentence is in orange. That's because no step definition has been created yet. And like I said, the step definition file is like the glue that contains the code implementation of what we want IntelliJ to do. So when we create a step definition, these ones will no longer be in, these ones won't be in orange anymore. The orange background is going to be taken off. We're going to be looking into that in our next class. So going back to this, given I navigate to the website, what happens after you've gone to the website? You need to fill out all the other fields. So one of the major fields I need to fill out is the first name and the last name. So I'm going to type, and you can see the and again. Before I finish typing, it is showing up. And I fill out the first name and last name field. So after the first name and last name field, what next? And I enter my email address because the email address field is next. And after, I'm not going to come back here again. So after the email address, we have the height. So I'm going to do those ones together. And I enter the email address. And the next one is height. And I enter my height. So you can see another thing I want you to take note of are the wordings I'm using. So when it comes to fields where you need to enter the value, I'm using keywords like enter, fill, F-I-L-L. I'm using the keywords enter, fill in my step definition, in my feature file. When it comes to drop downs or checkbox or radio buttons like this, these are what we call radio buttons. These are what we call checkbox. So when it comes to checkbox, radio buttons, or drop downs, I'm using words like select. I'm using words like select. When it comes to fields like this, I'm using words like enter, fill. So you need to take note of those keywords when you're also writing your feature file as well, going forward. So after I've written the step for my height, what do I need to do next? I need to select the right vegan option. So that's just what I'm going to put down. and I selecting it because it's a drop down. Select right option. And the next field is location. So you can tell me what I'm going to use for location, please.
I enter.
Thank you. And I enter my location. Okay. And I enter my location. So I'm going to copy the rest of the steps that I've written for all the other questions up onto favorite music.
How do you now write the drop down?
I've just done the drop down here. The right vegan option. That's what I did for the drop down. This is a drop down here. So you need to, I said you need to use select. So that's what you use for drop down. And I've written it here and I select the right vegan option. That's what I did before the location. Do you get it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Right. So I've gotten to the when, and I've copied that one by mistake. When I click the submit button, so what happens after I click the submit button? Then the form is submitted. Another thing that you usually do before you write your automation test case is to also carry out a manual step. So I'm going to fill out this form now. With valid details. Random test data. Cooking. And fill out as many values as you can for this box. Cost choice. I'm going to pick 3 options here. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, evening. And I'm going to click the submit button. And then the form is submitted. The form is submitted. So this is where we're going to be doing an assertion. So this is where we're going to be doing an assertion on the then step. And so this is like the manual step of the automation journey that we're going to be writing the code for. So I usually recommend that you do the manual steps before you actually write your test cases as well. So you have an idea of what the end result is going to look like. Then the form is submitted. So the assertion on the then step is going to be done on this message that we've gotten here. So I think this is where I'm just going to end the class today and pick up questions.